last week we ended up not studying that because we went over the Madayo de Ariador.
Yes.
So let's just summarize the first portion of the chapter. Just uh, concludes that the other soul, the second soul, the Jewish soul, Nefesh Eloki, is a part of Hashem, and we explained that in length. That it's not something Hashem does; it's part of what is, as we explained. So again, without going into it, we have already gone into it. Then the point is that this is what takes us into the next portion of the chapter. Is that what comes of it is that every Jewish soul is a revelation, an exposure of the essence of Hashem, Hakadosh Baruch Hu. Now the Rebbe will now ask that that being the case,
Rabbi, I'm sorry. I hear squeaking or background noise. I don't know where that's coming from, but
there.
does everyone hear that?
Yeah. I just
Okay.
muted you all and it went away.
Okay, great. Thanks.
So I don't know where it's coming from, but let's say that again. So again, so the conclusion was that the other soul is a revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's self. Now that being the case, Hashem being one, so it would be safe to assume, lichora, seemingly, that every Jewish soul would be similar, would be alike, would be identical. Actually, would be not that it would be identical. We'd all have the same soul. This revelation should all be the same thing being revealed within each and every one of us, and that's not the case. The case is that there are very many different levels and categorizations of souls, as he'll explain. So that's the question he asks now, and the next main bulk of the chapter is answering or contemplating on how the appearance of Hashem in everyone's soul, in each and every one of our souls, is such a multitude of varying appearances. Yet it's all the appearance of Hashem. Explaining that is the next topic. He brings a few allegories, and he also mentions a few different categorizations. So we'll read them through, and we'll try to contemplate on each one, and maybe get some insight on what he's saying here. Again, the technicality of everything is, we can explain that briefly, but as we say every time in our classes, you can also read the books that explain them. We'll try to get a broader picture to understand the point of the chapter. Even though, in a sense, we've already explained the point of the chapter. The point of the chapter, as opposed to chapter 1, is that when your animal soul is yourself, when you say you have a godly soul, it's something that's not yourself. That's the point, as we explained. It's Hashem's self. In light of that conclusion, now is a question that he's going to answer. So we'll start reading inside. He says, even though there are scores of thousands of different definitions and levels of neshamot. Gavol lein ketzer, very high neshamas. And what's the example he brings for high neshamas? So as we'll see right now, he'll mention three categories. Three categories, and within each category, we'll have to contemplate. One is that there are high neshamas. The first example he'll mention now is like the earlier generations, like Moshe Rabbeinu and our forefathers, our ancestors. If they were higher neshamas, they were general neshamas. Just like just like biologically, physically, you can picture it that Avram Avinu is like a archetype of all of us. We're all his offspring. So somewhere we're all intercluded within himself, in his self. So he's a very, 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 very general. Like if you'd picture a great grandfather with hundreds of great grandchildren, and each one of them sees him differently or sees himself within him differently. He's a piece of each one of these people's personality. Like he's my grandfather. He's also your grandfather. Well, he's his grandfather. He's a piece of everybody. So it's a very, very general person. It's a very broad personality. Many, many people see different aspects and are revealing different aspects of him. Whereas in this allegory, so a grandchild is relatively an expression of a very, very specific angle of the of the ancestry. So each grandchild, you don't even have to go to use a father and children. So each child is like a detail of the father. So the earlier souls are all much like broader, greater soul. It's called a larger soul, as we'll explain all these things a little bit more.
Is
So
this
that's the first example.
neshama klalit?
That's
You're
the
saying
phrase.
they're
Neshama
neshama
klali.
klalit.
There's also neshama gvoha. Not exactly the same thing. There's a phrase neshama klalit, a general soul, and there's a phrase neshama gvoha, a high, an exalted soul, which usually these two things are somewhat correlated. The, the higher a soul, the more general the soul is. Maybe even before we read it inside, we'll explain the vort. What he's explained here is called in Chassidus and Kabbalah. It's called the hitlapshut v'ma'avar. Even though he doesn't really use those phrases explicitly, he says them, but that's the concept that are being explained. There are two processes of how you process, two ways to process or to be processed. Like you can either go through something bihitlapshut or bima'avar. Bihitlapshut means like garmented or what would be the word for it?
Enclosed.
Enclosed. You can go through a certain stage or a certain experience, and you can be enclosed in that experience, or you can just go through it without being enclosed in it. For instance, a person can go to the army. 3 years in the army, right? So in those 3 years in the army, then you very often a person goes into the army and you become a soldier with all of the shtick of a soldier. You have the slang and you have the attitude and you become, it garments you. It adds a layer like a colorful see-through paper, and now your entire personality appears through this new layer. Now you're a soldier, and you can finish the army after 3 years, but you carry this layer onwards. Again, the attitude, the slang, the mentality, you went through an experience, but the way you went through it is that when you were in the experience, you were completely enclosed in it. That's called hitlabshut. Enclosed isn't precise because enclosed is like saying that you wear the experience. Here, it's saying that the experience swallowed you. You were drowned in it. You were soaked in it. You soaked in it, and it seeped in. Now it's like a layer on yourself. It's like if you put a pink paper in front of your eyes. Now everything you see is pink. You see life through that experience. It becomes a little bit similar to the psychological term of a trauma. That you went through something and it traumatized you. What does it mean it traumatized you? That you're still going through it. Somewhere you're still living it. It became another layer of yourself. Like if two people were in a car accident and one of them was traumatized, and now every time he hears a bang, he jumps. So the other person, no, he was in the same car, the same accident, but it didn't traumatize him. Again, he went through the same process, but he took it differently. He didn't. That person that was traumatized. So what does it mean to be traumatized? It means that really you didn't go through the accident. You're somewhere. You're still living it. It became part of you. You're enclosed in it, and it's like another layer to your personality. So 20 years later, you hear a bang, you jump. The other guy who was sitting right next to you in the car and went through the exact same experience, but he went through it differently. He really went through it. He just went through it. It's in his past. Simply, so it didn't add anything else. So like someone could go into the army, he was he was a joker before the army, and he stayed the same joker, and he came out the same joker. It didn't phase him at all. So one person goes into the army and he becomes the army, and one person goes to the army and he stays the same thing he was, doesn't kilu. Even though again
That's
shot,
b'ma'avar.
that's mom. Even though
It's not, you're not a
they both wore the green clothes and shot the guns and everything, but they went through it differently. So
And so
example,
b'ma'avar means passing through.
yeah,
And
mavar means just passing through, like sliding through, and the hitlab shoot means enclothement. That you went through it, in a way that it added a layer to you. It now encloses you, and yourself is now, even you yourself experience yourself through this additional shade of color. Now, the more shades of color, this is how we'll explain that. Like if I say this in Kabbalistic terms, so they'll say that there's seder hishtalshelut ha'olamot, 3 worlds. Each world has 10 sfirot and numerous different chambers and heichalot, and the soul goes through a certain process. And the question is, how did the soul process the stages? Now, it's a little bit different than how I mentioned it, because what in the examples I said, so it could very well be that it's not so good to be indifferent to your experiences. Here in the allegory, in the nimshal, so it's very, very clear that a less garmented soul, a more seminal awareness, is a higher soul, because it means that you've maintained your clarity. You went through the same experiences. Like it says about Moshe Rabbeinu, that he's Ish HaElokim, he's a neshama d'atzilut. So what does that mean? He's not again. He's not like you'd see him. He's not a ghost. He's a regular person, but his awareness went through all the processes and all the way into a physical body, just like me and you. But the way he went through that process, he just slid through. He maintains his clarity. Same awareness of the unity of Hashem that the soul has, being part of Hashem, wasn't tainted. Like you could, another example is maybe like a baby. Like a baby's born is very pure. What does it mean the baby's pure? He's a very seminal version of himself. Now, really, what can come of him? Anything. Anything could come of him. There are infinite scenarios. He could be a cowboy. He could be an astronaut. He could be a rabbi. He could be anything. The younger he is, he also feels that way. Like a 5-year-old, you ask him, what are you going to be? I don't know, maybe I'll be a cowboy. Maybe I'll be an astronaut. I don't know. You could be anything. Now, the experiences of life, they tend to garment you. They add layers on, and slowly but surely, the clay hardens, and you start being funneled into a very, very, very specific, narrow personality until at very old age, you can't even change the type of coffee you drink. You become very, very zeroed in. So again, so a high soul is saying that you went through a lot, but you maintained your juvenile, seminal purity. So the soul here in physical olam asiyah, the lowest world, is still experiencing itself the way the soul experiences itself in its most seminal clarity as being part of Hashem. Yeah.
So, but it seems like for us, it's more of a question of peeling off those layers, like since we went experienced
Okay.
it. So
even though again here I'm giving examples from life, but the process he's describing is like the root of my soul. This is my get-go. This is my starting point. My soul has gone through this. I was birthed this way, and this is where my soul is. So an neshama d'asiyah means that I'm experiencing Hashem's presence as it's enclosed in physical action. So like Hashem appears to me through activity. Things happen to me. That's where I see Hashem. It's much harder for me you've been studying Hasidus or something, like abstract thought is much harder. Not that it's impossible, it's not natural, it's stepping out of myself. And so a higher soul is very, very naturally communicative with seeing Hashem on a much, much thinner layer. Again, naturally. So what can be then later achieved with a lot of avoid? Okay, that's a question, but there's definitely a difference. That's what he's saying here. And there's also a difference between generations. The earlier generations, let's maybe once we jump forward a bit, we'll finish that thought. Why is that what we just explained now? That's what we'd call a high soul, a neshama gvoha, right? Because it's again maintaining a seminal awareness. Now, why is a high soul sometimes also called a general soul? Not the same thing, as we'll explain now. Because like the example I said from a baby, that how many people could come out of this baby? So again, like a million different people. Like when he's a baby, it's not that he could either be an astronaut or a cowboy. He can be an astronaut and he can also be a cowboy. He can really be each one of these things and many other things. Now, it obviously in life, in reality, in this world, so only one scenario develops. But in like a soul coming down to reality, so it could very well be that one person has in his body shining a certain level of a soul. Like for instance, I'll give maybe we'll say another physical example. This also brought in Chassidus a lot. This is, again, a physical example depicting the same concept. That it's very often allegorized to taking a flashlight, and shining it through a gemstone. So if you shine the flashlight through the gemstone, what happens? So there are millions of rays. At first, there's a simple white, clear ray, but that ray really can split into millions of rays. And it goes through the gemstone, and depending on how each specific ray takes the process, then at the other end of the gemstone, you get like a rainbow of colors and wavelength and the. Now, every once in a while, it could be, I don't know, randomly, like one in a billion, that one ray doesn't hit any mirror, doesn't hit any angle. It just comes in and out the same way. You shine it through a gemstone, and maybe one of those billion rays is precisely the same ray that that is shown in from the Yeholia. And also the numerous rays that changed, so some changed a lot. Right? Some went through thousands or millions of different angles, and each one added its shade. And some rays only went through a few angles and then came out, so they're just a little bit garmented. And that's like a neshama de bria, neshama de yetzira. They're neshamas from different layers. Now the logic, the rule is that there can be ma'avar after hitlabshut. There can be passing after garmenting, but there can't be garmenting after passing. What does that mean? Again, that the soul, it garments itself as much as it does, and then from a certain point, it slides through. How much were you phased by the process? You were phased to a certain point, and from that point, you slid through. But you don't slide and then get phased. You get phased and then slide. Again, like the example you said from the army. Right? A person goes into the army. So at first, he's taken by the army. He's impressed. Right? And he gets into it very much, very much, very much. Now, how deeply does he get into it? So one guy went for the first 6 months. He was mamish, very motivated, very, very strong. From that point, he kind of caught it, that it's kilutov, it's all a game, it's a bluff. And that's it. From that point onwards, he just slid right through. A different guy took it much more seriously. He went in for 2 years. He was completely, until after 2 years, if you've been in the army, at the middle of the second year, everybody's already one foot out. Not everybody. There's some people that go into the army, they take it so seriously, after 3 years, they sign on for another 3 years. And that's it. They die soldiers, Rahman al-Islam. You got lots of, not chas v'shalom in combat, in old age, but they become completely, it becomes their entire personality, their entire self. So just like here, you don't slide and then take serious. You take seriously, you in garment, you clothe yourself until something of the effect dwindles. At some point, you just slide through. Now, same thing here, like a soul goes down through all the emanations of Atzilut, and it becomes like Hitlapshut means that when you went from Chokhmah to Bina, then you became Bina, like you became a soldier. You became this new chamber, this new experience. And it's like another shade of color. So you added on a pink shade, and then you added on an orange shade, and then a blue shade. If you're going to add on enough shades, at the end, you're just going to see dark. It's going to become very, very coarse. That's what Olam Asiyah is. You're just seeing brown in the muck. So you've added on so many different shades that it's just, you barely see anything anymore. So the more you add on means you've gone from a stage to a stage, and each stage you become that stage. So when the neshama goes down from the world of emanation to the world of creation, so it becomes a creation. Now I'm a creation. And also in each world, I go from chokhmah to bina, I become chesed, I become gvura. I become each stage that I go through. But at some point, I stop being phased so much by each stage, and then I just slide in. So if I was phased all the way to the emanation of Bina in the world of formation, but from there onwards I slid in. So that's called a neshama de yetzira. That's a soul from the world of formation, which means that it maintained that till that point. It enclosed itself, but from that point it slid. So it's maintaining that awareness. And it's, again, the process is always such that first the soul is enclosed all the way to where it's enclosed, and from there it slides. There's no enclosure after sliding. There's only enclosure before sliding. You enclose up until, again, being enclosed is like being phased, being impressed. The word is a reshimu, which means an impression. Each stage leaves an impression on you.
So after you start sliding, it means that you're not buying into it. You're not taking on the garments anymore. You're staying who you are.
That's why I said that in human life, that could be not so good. Maybe you should take things seriously. If you, in the allegory, it's depicting that your soul wasn't phased. You don't take it too serious. What does it mean that we're a low soul, a soul of Asiyah? That we take physicality very, very seriously. We're very phased by it. We're completely enclosed in it. And that's a layer upon a layer upon a layer upon a layer. Because that doesn't start there. So it's like I said before, it's like pink and blue and orange. At the end, it's just dark. It's just brown. Yeah. What were you asking?
Yes. So there can be ma'avar after hitlapshus, and you gave the example of the guy he's hitlapshut up to bina of Yitzira, and then he slides through, but he never gets high. He's never higher than bina of Yitzira. There he's got enclosed, and then from there
he was higher. So all the souls, as he'll say soon, are all rooting from the same place. But it depends how they went through the process.
But the other way I can't quite grasp. So
when
what
you
if
say the phrase "the root of a specific person's soul," you're referring to the stage until which he was engarmented. That's what
until it was the stage where it got his slapshut until where? So why couldn't someone slide down to Bina of Yitzira and then take on his slapshut after that? Why can't his slapshut come after Ma'avar? I didn't get that.
Because again, if you weren't phased by Chokhmah, then you're not going to be phased by anything. Each deterioration it's like, again, like that example I said in the army. if the first day in the army, with all of the pathos and the pyrotechnics, if that doesn't phase you, you're a lost cause. They're not going to catch you. Chaval al-azman. Now, Bemet, you see statistically that everybody's phased in the beginning. Now, many people, they pick up on the bluff pretty quick. But thousands of people don't pick up on the bluff till their very last day. You got people in Israel walking around and talking in acronyms and ordering you around when they're 80. It's like I remember when I was in the army, so people who signed on. Again, I'm not saying this is very good people in the army as well. It's not a declaration. There was always like a derogatory angle what was the phrase what we used? Like real life fallouts. That was the phrase. If you sign on the army, then you're a reality fallout. Reality is too big for you, so you stay in the army is like a game. What's a military life? It's a game. We've made up hierarchies, we've made up ranks. The second you step out of the army, you're nobody. You're worthless. You could be the highest ranking officer. Okay, you go to the supermarket, now you're nobody. Nobody stands and bring me the milk. I'm not gonna bring you the milk. Bring your own milk. It's not. There's something very delusional about the military life. That's why, again, this is also why people. It's somewhat traumatic leaving the army. There's a certain you're stepping out of an autistic bubble into reality. And many people just aren't capable of doing it after 3 years, and they just sign on and on and on and on, and they keep living the delusion. Israel, by the way, is very conducive of that because in a sense everybody's living the delusion. Everybody's got a son in the army or a kid or a friend in the army. It's not so clear where the delusion ends and reality starts. But like if in America, for instance, so people coming back from the military it's very difficult. It's very complicated. It's like being a civilian after you've been 15 years in Afghanistan, again, not because of the traumatic experiences, just because the army it's a game. People, it's like playing an imaginary role game. Who's important, who's not important, and none of these things have any real, no objective value. It's like a bunch of people got together and decided to agree upon a set of rules and take them very seriously. And it phases you. It phases you so much that when you step out of it abruptly, and it all just dissipates into thin air because it's all a bluff. It's very traumatic for people. Mm-hmm. Why am I saying that? Just that to try and sense that our experience of life, the seriousness of how we experience reality, is a result of being phased very drastically by the atmosphere of things. So again, if you weren't phased up there, then you're not going to be phased. It's only a question of how much were we capable of phasing you. But there's no such thing as taking a non-phased person. That would be like walking up to you, some general, and saying, "Go bring the milk." You look at him like he fell out of Mars. If you come into the yard, you go through the whole process, then maybe you get to that point where generals are something to you. But if you haven't gone through the process, then there's no way to catch you at the end. It's not possible because nothing is developed here. It's just so no such thing. So in Kabbalah, this is like a rule. I'm trying to give like a psychological depiction of this rule in Kabbalah, why it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So if you slide through safely, you're not going to get caught up in the illusion. That's the hislapshus is getting caught up in the illusion.
No. Again, I wouldn't call it an illusion in Kabbalah. It's not an illusion. Our reality is not an illusion. It's not real.
Of separation, of not unity.
It's a matter of the proportions are an illusion. You're caught up in your layer of everything so much that you only see that layer. So the proportions become everything. Like all of reality is just matter to me. It's just
so it's forgetting Hashem. Hislapshus is forgetting Hashem. Mavar is remembering.
It's forgetting. Again, we're talking about the hislabshus of the godly soul. This is all the godly soul itself. So it's forgetting that Hashem is more than what I conceive. It's all a conception of Hashem. It's all faith. But for instance, again, let me give a simple example. A soul in the world of action, of asiya. So when I say Hashem, what do I mean? So Hashem, to me, is all sorts of occurrences. Hashgacha prati, again. It's all engarmented in the coarsest action. Now, but again, that's faith. I have faith. I have faith, but my faith is embodied in a very, very coarse layer. And it's so phased by that layer that it forgets that there's anything else. That everything that was. So this is all Hashem is. So it's not a bad thing. This is your faith. This is your godly soul's appearance. It's not your animal soul. But a low soul means that your godliness appears to you in garmented manner. It's a low soul. It's a soul. It's a godly soul. It's a godly thing. Feeling hashgacha pratit, feeling the how the course of physical, everything that's happening, that's being done, is all HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's a holy sense. That's faith.
And what determines the amount of hislapshus of each individual soul?
So in Tanya, definitely the pshat is that it's kilu Hashem's choice. It's hashgacha pratit.
It's not past Gilgulim or choices people make.
It's also past Gilgulim, but past Gilgulim also mean that this is how Kadosh Baruch Hu has rolled things on. This is just how koreh hadorot merosh. This is what Hashem wants. Now, from our vantage point today, when you look on the history of the Jewish people, then you can see that there is a certain order here of how Hashem wants things to roll, and the order is an order of deterioration, going from the more exaltant, we still haven't explained that. But why does a high soul also very likely imply a general soul? Because again, a higher level, like in life, the more seminal I catch you, the more options there are of development. The more people can come out of you, the more things can still happen. So like your 16-year-old version of self is a very general version of who you are. You could have been very, very many people, and they all coexisted when you were 16. You've gotten rid of most of them by now, but when you were 16, so you were a general, again, a seminal version is also a general version. Now, why is not every high soul a general soul? Because when you say that there's a general soul, what you mean is that there is not that hypothetically many souls could have come out of it. No, what you mean is that many souls actually came out of it. It's like saying that I take your 16-year-old version of self and I actualize all of the options. So now you have like 10,000 Effie's walking around. Each one is different, very different from his other Effie, but they all stem from the same soul. Now, not only have they all actualized, also their general root is actualized. So there's like a Rebbe walking around in the world who is an appearance of the seminal soul itself. And each one of these little Effie's here, he senses a kinship and a belonging to that branch, to that general person. Again, like the example we said, like a father and many children, like a grandfather and a lot of offspring. He's like a piece. Every one of them is like a piece of him, even though they're very different. So what do you have here? You have also the general soul slid through into reality, but it also kept engarmenting and splitting and splitting and splitting. And all those individual souls also slid into reality. So you have 1,000 Hasidim and a Rebbe. This is called a general soul. Now, not every high soul is general soul. You could have someone who is a very high soul, but that soul did not actualize or only the high soul actualized, but it didn't split onwards. So he doesn't have Chasidim. He'd be a very exalted tzaddik. He doesn't have many Chasidim. He doesn't have offspring. He could have had potential. Like anybody who lived 2,000 years ago, hypothetically could have split into thousands and millions of people. Like millions of details of his self could have actualized. Could it be that there was a person 2,000 years ago who didn't have kids? Could be. That's a high soul. It's not a general soul. Potential general soul, but it didn't actualize.
Okay.
And when you spread this allegory, like these examples, on all of the generations, like a span of history, so it's like easier to picture. That's the first example he says here. But in a second, we'll see it's not just the span of history. He'll say that also in every specific generation, there are souls that are high souls, and there are souls that are split from that high soul. There are lower souls within living together in the world, like a Rebbe and Hasidim. Again, Rebbe and Hasidim are like a father and son, and many children. Again, actualizations of himself. And moreover than that, he'll say each individual soul itself has also higher layers and lower layers, like places that are more garmented and sides that are less garmented. Like maybe your behavior was phased by the army, but your awareness was less phased, so your emotions were less. So each specific soul has levels within it. And so he says three areas of contemplation, how you can see this, and they're all true. There's earlier generations and lower generations. Within every generation, there's higher tzaddikim and lower simple people. And within each person, there's higher attributes and lower attributes. All these things are a result of a process of garmenting. So does that make sense?
So these are the three categories.
These are the three categories. Exactly.
Earlier and later generations, higher and lower souls, and higher and lower parts of an individual soul.
Exactly. So we'll read it inside just to see it in his words first. So we'll start from the beginning, just to read it inside. He says, even though there are very many different varying souls. For instance, for instance, if we try to relate between our forefathers, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe Rabbeinu, if we correspond them to us, to our generation, which is the lowest generation, that means the heels. They're like the head, and we're like the heels. Again, the simplest allegory. We'll say this allegory again. Also, this allegory I'm saying now. He himself will mention in a few more lines. Another allegory we said already. Army, like psychological processes. We said a gemstone. That was one of the allegories we said. The allegory he says here is the most common allegory in Chassidus, and it's the process of birth. Of birthing a child, where a seminal seed develops into an entire child. And even it goes into the womb. The womb is like the process of the worlds, like the gemstone. And it develops. Now each part of that seed takes the development differently. So one part becomes an ear. One part develops into a finger. One part now, the entire seminal seed all comes from the mind through the spine, and rather from the mind. It comes from the physical mind, from the physical brain, actually, but really it's coming from the mind. It's coming from the personality, from the self, and that coarsens until it becomes much a physical, tiny little physical seed. And then that develops more and more, there's a process of coarsening. So whatever happens within the person itself, that's like Olam HaAtzilut. But once it's inseminated within a womb, so that's like the worlds, and there it keeps going through process. Now, what do you get at the end of this process? That's the example he's going to mention. You get a seed, which is like a piece of the father's mind. Now, seminally, within that seed, there's everything, like what we call today a DNA. Everything's there. It's not only that everything's there, there's the whole child is there. His hair, his fingernails, his ears. Now, if you put it under a microscope, you're not going to see a tiny little baby. It's not there actualized. It's not engarmented. It's there seminally. That's called a high soul. Just like, again, your great grandfather, it's not that he had a bunch of little kids in him. It's like he's one thing, but you can you can develop elements, and then retroactively you can see that all the details were inter-included in the general seminal stage. It's like this example he says here, that the seed inter-includes all the details that can be developed from it, but not in reality. You can't find a finger within the seed, but it's there. But how is it there? So in the seed, the finger and the mind and the hair and the footnail are all the same. They're all one thing, like a DNA pattern. They're all part of one thing. They're mamish one thing, but they're all there. Not only are they all there, only one child can come out of you. It's like a finite infinite. It's not it's not a mufshat. That's the phrase. It's not an infinite infinity. It's not like a potential of a seed. No, it's one baby. Like in Kabbalah, the souls is like a limit of souls. There could be infinite souls, but they're all part of one soul. So you can infinitely detail the person, but it's still only him. So just like all of the limbs and body parts of the baby come out of that seminal seed, but so on the one hand, there's like infinite details there, but on the other hand, only one baby comes out. It's the infinity of a finitude, a finite infinity, a specific infinity. That's the example he'll say. So now, why is this the example he's using? Because the most classic allegory for all these relationships that we mentioned before, the earlier generations and our generation, within each generation, within a person himself. So the simplest allegory is always allegorizing things to a person, to an Adam. So we'd say that the higher generations were the head of the people. Or within our generation, the tzaddikim are the head of the nation. The leaders, the head, the eyes of the nation. And the lower souls are the heels of the nation. Or also the higher generations were the head. Our forefathers were the head of our nation. And we are the heel, the heel of the nation. And this is all these phrases are punning off the allegory of the development of a child, of a baby. That you take a seminal seed, which everything is inter-included there, and not only is it inter-included, it's all one thing. We're all one level there. And nonetheless, depending on how the seed takes the process, it ends up developing fingers and heels, and the heel of that baby is much coarser, and even the baby himself feels his heel much less. He's expressed in his heel much less. Now, also that baby also has a mind. The mind of the baby is completely identical to the mind. Like there's a part of that mindly seed that remains mindly. That's the baby's mind. It's like a tzaddik, the head of the nation, who is still maintaining the form of his seminal form. Not only that, the baby can also have a baby. He can also produce a seed. There's the higher levels of the result are, again, relatively maintaining their seminal form. The lower levels of the result are also all striving from the same seminal place, but they've developed differently. So you get fingers and head and arms and legs, and you get an entire body. So this allegory can be used to describe all of history, can be used to describe every generation, can be used to describe every specific soul, depending on which layer you want to discuss it. That's what he is saying. So that's the phrase he uses here, saying ikvet ad mashiach, that our generations are called the heels of the Jewish people, of all of history. The first generations were the head, and we're the heel. Shehem b'chinat hakevai mamash, legabei hamoach v'arosh. Relatively to the mind and the head, we're like heels. V'chen b'chol dor v'dor. Now he says the second layer. In every specific generation, yesh rashei alfei Yisrael. There are the heads of the people. Shenishmotehem b'chinat rosh v'moach. Their souls are like a mind, and the seminal mind where everything's coming from. Legabei, relative to the neshamot shel ha'amon ve'amei ha'aretz, of the simple people. It's the second layer. And the third layer now, v'chen nefashot legabei nefashot. Also the souls in of themselves. Ki kol nefesh, each specific soul, klula mi nefesh ruach neshama, is inter-included from a nefesh, ruach, neshama, different layers within itself. And also there, again, the neshama is the head, the moyechin, the mind, the chabad. The nefesh is the nehi, the feet. The ruach is the heart. Each layer of the neshama is also a man, a structure of a man. Nonetheless, שורש כל הנפש, רוח ונשמה כולם, מראש כל המדרגות, עד סוף כל הדרגים, המלובש בגוף עמי הארץ וקל שבקלים. Nonetheless, all of these souls and all the generations and all the people and all the lowest layers of the lowest people of the lowest generation to the highest layers of the highest people of the highest generation, עד סוף כל דרגה, מלובש בגוף עמי הארץ וקל שבקלים, נמשך ממוח העליון שהיא חוכמה הילאה כביכול. We're all, again, a coarsening of Hashem, of a seed, a seminal seed from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. K'mashal haben nimshach mimocha. Just like a child is developed from his father. So we are all, and you can see the entire Jewish people as one child. You can see the entire Jewish people as many children. You can see the entire Jewish people as of many elements of many children. You can see it this way. That doesn't. It's all Hashem giving birth. It's all Hashem, a piece of Hashem actualized. It's like a grandfather and a lot of offspring. That each grandchild is an actualization of an element of his grandfather. You've taken one person and you've actualized him in details. That's all of the Jewish souls. Higher details, lower details. The highest details are still maintaining the clarity of their source, and they're very similar to their father. A little bit lower than that, they're very just imagine you have a grandfather in like 5 generations. So his kids all look like him, mamish. And it's like yesterday, my wife pulled out some childhood pictures. Right, so you take out pictures of her aunts and uncles and her father and her grandfather, and you see that here, you see that to my daughter, so you see how her lips are similar to my great-grandmother. You see that? That obviously, the physicality is just, it's also true. But more than that is the personality. They're all they're much more similar. Everybody's the same. So again, so you see now still the higher generations it's clearer, it's more blunt. So you see a father with 5 kids, so each one is mamish him. Now the 50 grandkids, so it's more engarmented. And the great grandkids more. Every outside you look at any Jew in the street and you can see Avram Avinu mamish. You can see a piece of Avram Avinu, and Avram Avinu himself, he's just a piece of a HaKadosh Baruch. Everyone's a piece of a HaKadosh Baruch. So every Jew you see is like, it's like an element of Hashem. I could be this. Hashem looks at every Jew and he thinks, I could be that way, I could be that way, I could be that way. He actualized all these elements. That even the the foot nails, the nails of his foot, the fingernails of his foot, were all nitavu mitipazo mamash. It all came from the same seminal root. By being 9 months in the womb and coarsening from level to level. ואם כל זה עודנה קשורה ומיוחדת בייחוד נפלא ועצום מהותה ועצמותה הראשון שהייתה טיפת מוח, and still, nonetheless, even after it's actualized, I mean, this is already a little bit different, seemingly different than the allegory needs to be contemplated. That the child is also, he's not different, he's not something other than the father. You know, so in our allegory, it's harder to imagine this. Because when you say a grandfather and many children, at the end, there's a lot of different people here. When you say a Kadosh Baruch Hu, nothing's happening outside of Hashem. It's just a process. So it's all a Kadosh Baruch Hu mamish. Now, really, that's the same about a father and a son as well. Even halachically, it's that way. The famous details in halacha is that if a person an inheritance, halachically, and there are very many relevant results to this halachic concept, that inheritance, when a child inherits his parents, is not a passing of wealth. Like if I purchase something from you, then there's something has happened here. The money or the wealth has gone from one person to another. An inheritance is not a process. Nothing happens in inheritance. The inheritor stands in the stead of the original owner. He's not a second owner. He's part of one reality. Because that's what it is. It's part of an inheritance is a continuum, not a stage. It's a continuum. Same thing here. So, but again, this is something to feel it in the allegory is a bit harder. And that's what he says here, that nonetheless, after all the coarsening, just like in a human body, the fingernails are still entirely part of you. They're no less you, even after they've coarsened. Same thing all of the souls. קשורה ומיוחדת בייחוד נפלא ועצום במהותה ועצמותה הראשון שהייתה טיפת מוח האב. וגם עכשיו בבן היא ניקת הציפורניים וחיותה נמשכת מהמוח שבראש, and that's why if you disconnect the nail from the body, it dies. It stops existing because it's still part of one thing. As the Gemara says, that the loven, the seminal whiteness of the seed, is the root also of the gidin, of the veins and the bones and even the fingernails. כמו שכתוב בעץ חיים. וככה ממש כביכול בשורש כל הנפש רוח הנשמה של כלות ישראל למעלה. We'll read up to here today. That, and that was the general concept. And now there's a lot of details. We'll play with it more maybe next week. What each one of these allegories is saying to us, each one of the levels. So, but the Vort is how was to answer why there's a multitude of varying souls, all stemming, even though we're all an expression of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's self, the godly soul. Say there, Mizrat Hashem.
Rabbi, could you just go over again about inheritance? I didn't quite get what you were saying about inheritance.
I just wanted to use the example of inheritance, of the halacha, of inheritance, to show that also in the allegory, in our reality, the child being part of the father is something that is conceptual in our reality as well. And the example is halachic, and also you can sense it. That an inheritance is not a passing of wealth. It's not like a purchasing. If I purchase something from you, then that thing has changed hands. But if someone inherits, it's not called changing hands. The inheritor is in the stead of the original owner. He's not, it's just staying put. It feels that way, again.
Okay, and so how is that the same as the child still have a piece of the grandfather in him?
The grandfather, he's still part of the grandfather. Even after he's born, he's still part. So if the father gives his son something, it hasn't really changed hands. It's like putting on shoes. it's not, it doesn't change hands. It's an extension of yourself. If you sell to a foreign person, then the wealth changes hands. But if you inherit to your children, then it's still yours. You haven't given it to anybody. It remains yours. And that's why inheritance is the only process of purchasing that can happen inevitably. You don't do anything in order to inherit. If you want to sell something, you have to do a kinyan. You have to pick it up, you have to take it, you have to give it, you have to sign. But inheritance just happens because nothing's happened. That's why it just happens. The child is his parents. So if you have children, then your belongings continue to be yours after your passing. Nothing needs to happen for that. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to write a will. You don't need to do anything. It's automatic. Because it's not really, nothing's really happening. But if you want your belongings to go to someone who's not your inheritor, you want to sell something, then you have to make a change in reality. You have to do it. If you don't initiate, it won't happen. Then it hasn't happened. So if I tell you I sell you everything and I agree and I want it to be yours, that's all nothing. If we haven't done an action of changing reality, then I haven't purchased it. And you can change your mind. But inheritance, you don't need to do anything because really nothing's happening. It's just remaining yours. And your child is just an extension of yourself. So also halachically, it's like that. And also, it just is. It's like that. You could feel it's like